Hello, this is Come Alive, where we share with you the word of the day. This week we've been looking at devotion. Focus. One thing that you're willing to give yourself to. And today we look at one of the biblical characters, and we look at the life of David. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 26. The Bible says, David asked the men standing near him, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and remove this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? What does that have to do with devotion? I want to remind you that David, by then, he was a young boy. He was still a teenager. Remember, even when Samuel came to anoint him a king, even his father did not summon him when he was summoning his sons to come and meet Samuel, the prophet. He was forgotten, even in his own family. But let me tell you this, God had already told Samuel something that stopped crying over the life of Saul. Because I have already found myself a king, a man after my own heart. So what was the devotion? David's devotion was to make God great. David's devotion is for God to be glorified in his life. His devotion was God. His devotion was his king. And that's the reason he had already, we know him as the greatest psalmist. You know, no one questions David's devotion to God. And David was devoted to his God and his master. And he was devoted that his life should be able to glorify God in whatever the case. And now he is sent to the battlefield to take his food to his brothers. And then he sees this Philistine Goliath who is defying and abusing the armies of God. And that stirs up rage and anger in David's heart. And David gets to ask, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? How dare he insult the armies of God? You know, look at that language. Look at how it cuts David that the God's army, they are fleeing. They are running away from this thing. Remember, he's still a boy. He's still a teenager. And when I look at his words, it tells me much about David. He says this, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? As long as Goliath was there abusing the armies of God, it was a disgrace in Israel. And according to David, there is no way the nation of God could be defiled in such a way. And then he says, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? So the question to David's mind, it is not the fear of the people, it is not the Israel that are being ashamed. To David, it is God who is being put to ridicule. Wow. That's a higher devotion, that David could not sit back and watch God be ridiculed by an uncircumcised giant. And actually, when you look at going forward, David speaks to this giant in verse number 45. Towards the end, he tells him, you come against me with a sword and a spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, who you have defied. Verse 46. This day, the Lord will hand you over to me. And what David is saying and telling this Philistine, today is the day that this ends. This ridicule ends. David was devoted for God's glory, his name to be glorified. And let me tell you this, the success of David's life as the greatest king Israel ever had, the wealth he ever gained and the victories he ever gained, it came because of one reason, that David was committed and he was devoted to seeking God and to glorifying God with his life. Simple. Let me ask a question. What are you devoted to? Do you have a cause that you're willing to die for? David was willing to put his life down so that the name of God can be glorified once again. This is your host, Pastor Joshua. Thank you for joining me. God bless you.